ventriloquist. Okay. Can we start?
Раз, два, раз, два, раз, два, три, раз, два, три.
Excuse me.
Раз, два.
Can we start the program,
два.
please?
Раз, два.
Can they stop testing? It's going to be quite embarrassing otherwise if they...
Коллеги, начинаем конференцию. Прекратите тестирование, хорошо? Спасибо большое.
Раз, два.
Звукорежиссеры, прекратите тестирование. Начинаем.
Thank you. Okay. We start. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Media 2020, our third day here. Media 2020 is a partnership between the ABU and Radio Romania, and we co-hosted with the gracious help of our hosts, Kaz Media. So if I can call to the stage our MC for the day, it is Dan Santa, he's the Director of International Relations for Radio Romania, and your host.
Thank you, Olia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, friends. I am very pleased and honored to welcome you today at the fourth edition of Media 2020 conference. Initiated and co-partnered by Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union and Radio Romania, Media 2020 has become already a hotspot for public broadcasters from both Europe and Asia Pacific region. Since the first edition, the main aim of the conference has been to prepare broadcasters across all media platforms for the challenges we will need to face by 2020 and beyond. Today, we are halfway towards our goal, since 2020 is drawing closer. This is why this year's topic of the conference aims to look beyond the horizon and raise a few essential questions regarding the present and the future of broadcasting in the new information age. This year's conference is hosted by Kaz Media in Astana, to whom we would like to address our warmest congratulations, thank for their wonderful openness, availability, and excellent, let me add, outstanding organization. The fact that Media 2020 is held this year in conjunction with Radio Asia 2018 is a strong proof of how important dialogue has become between media professionals. We live in a globalized world, we are facing similar challenges, and only together we can find long-term solutions to maintain our role and our mission. I am very pleased to invite now Mr. Georgica Severin, Radio Romania President, Director General, organizer of this conference, to convey a welcome message on behalf of Radio Romania National Broadcaster. Please.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Olia. First of all, I think this is the most important event after the match of this night. But, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, I am very pleased to be with you here today at the opening of the fourth edition of Media 2020 conference. For us, this edition is a major achievement. Together, we have succeeded to bring forward this wonderful project, which was initiated 4 years ago by Radio Romania and Asia Broadcasting Union. If back in 2015, it was intended to happen just once. It was due to our shared vision and to the special support of Dr. Jawad Motagi, to whom I would like to thank personally, today that Media 2020 has become a yearly conference. After Bucharest, Beijing, and Sinaia, here we are in Astana at a new edition of Asia-Europe Media Dialogues, hosted by Kaz Media Center. Please allow me to address our warmest and heartfelt thanks to our host for organizing this event at the highest professional standards. Special thanks also go to His Excellency Ms. Vice Minister Nurgul Oserbayevna Maverbelinova, Vice Minister of Information and Communication of Kazakhstan, for joining us today and for supporting this conference. Thank you very much. Media 2020 has aimed... Please, I'm not a star. Media 2020 has aimed and has effectively managed to open a new communication horizon between Asia and Europe in the field of broadcasting. One of the most important gains of our meetings remains undoubtedly our increasing capacity to look together at the future in a global context where we all have to face the main problems of the day, starting from political and economic challenges to the new media age we all have to adapt to. Media 2020 has become a beautiful celebration of dialogue and of blue thinking. I am convinced that only together we can shape the future and become stronger to sharing our experiences. Traditional and new partners, all leading broadcasting experts, are here today to discuss about some of the hottest issues at the core of the current global debate. I would like to thank our guest speakers coming from 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Australia, for accepting our invitation. Thanks to your presence, the conference today is a wonderful mosaic of unity in diversity, how Jawad said. For Radio Romania, the institution I represent, this 4th edition of Media 2020 acquires even a more special significance, since it takes place in the context of the celebration of 90 years since our first broadcast in 1928. We are among the oldest radio stations in Europe, and continuity has always been for us a strong value, alongside serving and delivering impartial and professional content to our audience. On these grounds, we are truly convinced that Media 2020, a project we strongly believe in, will continue to grow and achieve its main goal, that of bringing together and prepare broadcasters across all platforms for what will come next in our fast-growing media world. And of course, maybe this edition, it's very special because when I heard that Astana had 20 years this year, I think this is a Media 2020, 3 times 20. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and let me add, thank you very much for your permanent support to this extraordinary Europe-Asia-Pacific dialogue. I have now the great honor to invite Mrs. Nurgul Oserbayevna Mauberlinova, Vice Minister of Information and Communication from Kazakhstan, to address the welcome message to this conference on behalf of our host country. Please.
Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые участники конференции, добрый день. Сегодня мы завершаем наш большой проект «Медиа-диалог Азии». И я убеждена, что завершаем его с хорошими результатами за эти неполные 4 дня, которые прошли наши. Были проведены очень плодотворные конференции, семинары, переговоры и обмен опытом. Сегодня всех нас объединяет стремление к кооперации и сотрудничеству, совместному решению современных проблем в области медиа, готовность сообща искать новые пути эффективного развития. В этом ключе, я думаю, медиа-диалог Азии успешно выполнил свою миссию. Переходя к повестке «Медиа 2020», хочу отметить, что сегодня у нас есть уникальный шанс обсудить злободневные вопросы средств массовой информации с представителями самых разных культур и цивилизаций. Символично, что именно в Астане, новой столице Евразии, Восток и Запад сообща ищут ответы на ключевые вызовы современности. Сегодня нам По-новому предстоит осмыслить роль Центральной Азии в контексте смещения информационных потоков в страны развивающегося мира. Во-вторых, немаловажно найти баланс в использовании новых возможностей, созданных благодаря интенсивному развитию новых технологий. И самое главное, в-третьих, мы не оставим без внимания одну из острейших проблем современного медиапотребления – это фейк-ньюс. В завершении попробуем заглянуть за завесу будущего и спрогнозировать новые тренды в нашей сфере. Надеюсь, что сегодня нас ждут конструктивные семинары, конструктивная конференция, и каждый сможет извлечь для себя как можно больше. В очередной раз хотела бы поблагодарить всех зарубежных участников проекта за то, что приняли активное участие, за то, что приняли наше приглашение и так активно участвовали в проекте все эти дни. Надеюсь, что вы приятно и плодотворно проводите время в Астане. Благодарю за внимание.
Спасибо большое, госпожа вице-министр. Thank you very much, Lady Vice Minister. And now I am delighted, very pleased to give the floor to the person who made this unique dialogue possible. The person who a few years ago trusted Radio Romania capacity in organizing this meeting. I invite Dr. Javad Motagi, Secretary General of Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union.
Honorable Vice Minister, my colleague George, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Honorable Vice Minister for joining us this morning, for gracing this gathering. My thanks goes to the host for being a wonderful host and for making it possible for broadcasters from East and West to get together and talk together. For us in the East and West, it is essential to have a better understanding. And that starts with dialogue. Dialogue to share the challenges and to look at opportunities. Dialogue to see how best we can change challenges to opportunities. And how best we can create partnership between broadcasters in the West and East. And ultimately, how this partnership could lead broadcasters to create a better awareness among the public, as big as the audience in Asia and Europe. This is essential, and when I look at the history of Media 2020 since we started in 2015, I see a lot of partnership has started because of this dialogue. I see that even here in Astana, a lot of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, a lot of agreements have been signed between the Kazakh media partners, the Kazakh media stakeholders, and also other broadcasters in Asia and Europe. I have heard a number of partnership, a number of co-production, a number of radio exchange, program exchange took place in the last 2 days. And this tells us the fact that the dialogue has been constructive, resulted in partnership. Because when we talk about production, we talk about the message reaching the public. Yesterday, we enjoyed celebrating diversity. We had pleasant evening with singers, artists from various parts of Asia to show the beauties of the culture. And this is what we mean for. I'm grateful to Honorable Vice Minister. I'm grateful to our members in Kazakhstan for making it possible for us to come to Astana And we all enjoyed our stay here, and this friendly atmosphere, this friendly dialogue enables us to continue the good work that Radio Romania and ABU initiated some 4 years back. And I'm happy that Media 2020 is now its trademark and labor and can continue constructive dialogue. Thank you very much, and thanks to our host for being a wonderful host. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Motagi. Now, Media 2020 has been officially opened. But before starting our first session, I would like to invite Olia for some useful information.
Good morning. This is very useful exercise for us today. Welcome again. I just would like to tell you about some of the arrangements for the day. So this evening there will be a welcome reception. It will start shortly after the final session of the conference, and it's across the road in the Rixos Hotel. The conference is being streamed live. It's on the CAS Media website. So if you'd like to tell all your friends about it, please do so. We also have a hashtag. The hashtag is ABU Astana and Asia Media Dialogue. So please use that throughout. So without further ado, we'll get started with the first session.
I would like to thank once again our outstanding personalities for opening this conference, and we are now ready to start our first session. Let me introduce this session in my way, because everything starts with a story, and media also is about stories. Let me remind you a very, very old story, which exists in almost every culture. It's a very short one, and I will tell you a European version, starting in the Polish city of Krakow. It's about an old man having every night the same dream, a voice telling, go to Prague, dig next to the old bridge, and you will find a treasure. The old man is going to Prague, starting to dig, and of course, guardian of the bridge became very upset and asking, what are you doing there? And the old man tells him the dream, and the guard says, oh my goodness, you're so fool. Do you believe in dreams? You know, I have a similar dream every night, saying, go to Krakow, there is an old man there, dig next to him, his house, and you will find a treasure. The old man thanked to the guard, went back home, started digging next to his house, and of course, he found the treasure. And you know, we all know, the meaning of this old story is that we have all the answers. We have our treasure in ourselves, but the best way to find it is to look into the mirror of otherness, to make a trip around yourself or in a different country. So, this is what it is. This first session about this Central Asia round table, which invites us to a big challenge, to leave aside all stereotypes we have been used to while putting East and West face to face. Today, we will see how these two concepts are understood through Central Asian European perspective. So, I don't think I need to introduce our wonderful friend and host, Mr. Yerlik Karajan, Deputy Director General of Kaz Media Center, who will moderate this session. But just a few words. Yerlik is a graduate from London School of Economics with a PhD in economics, responsible at Kaz Media for strategic development and international cooperation. Please, applause for Yerlik.
Thank you very much. Before I start the session, excellent introduction, Dan. Very pleasant. What I wanted to say, colleagues, the translation is on channel 1 for both Russian and English. Okay, if you have issues with translation, maybe it doesn't work, it needs to be charged, then just go and ask colleagues to exchange it for a working one. Весь перевод у нас идет на канале 1, и на английский, и на русский, так что имейте в виду, если вдруг что-то не работает, можно пойти и поменять. Пока я делаю презентацию и приглашаю коллег за эту панельную дискуссию. So today I've been invited to do this round session, which is called Asia-Europe Media Dialogue, focused on Central Asia. In the spirit of Media 2020 Dialogues, this is a session for all members of all continents, but starting from a new perspective. Instead of the traditional East looks at West and West looks at East discussions, this session will be led by a guest speaker from Central Asia, challenging and preconceived views on the other, by dissecting the two global hemispheres from a Central Asian East European perspective. If you thought you knew about your own continent or other continent, this is the session to shake your worldview. So this was the introduction to the session. I'm very honored to have very interesting speakers who represent almost different continents, if you're not talking about Eurasia as Europe and Eurasia. First, I would like to invite Mr. Alan Azhibayev, who happens to be chairman of Khabar Agency from Kazakhstan. Please join. Alan has spent a lot of years in the private sector, and until recently he was Vice Minister of Information and Communications. And very recently he started his new position as a chairman of the Khabar Agency, which is the host and the owner of a number of TV channels, including Kazakh TV, Khabar 24, and some others, which support the broadcasting and they broadcast Kazakhstani product. Very interesting counterpart, Mr. Fayaz Shehryar, Director General of All India Radio. We are very honored to have Mr. Shehryar here in Kazakhstan, basically for a number of good reasons. That is, Kazakhstan and India historically has good relations. We had a number of guests from India, ruling governments visiting Kazakhstan in the past. And of course, there was some good cultural relations. That is, we really like Indian movies. And, but very interestingly, Mr. Shehryar is the chairman of one of the largest network of broadcasting, particularly in the radio sphere. Maybe you will mention that in your presentation, but just I wanted to highlight it. This is the largest network of radio in the world. My other speaker is from the other part of the world, with very controversial, I would say, background. It's a joke, of course. Mr. John Maguire, who's Director of International Relations and Cooperation, who is Irish as born but works in France. So it's France Media Monde. So we'll have a French-Irish perspective today. And I guess you'll be happy about the French in finals, right, in the World Cup. We have John Maguire, so he is Director of International Relations and Cooperations of France Media Monde since September 2003. Before that, he held positions also in the French media. And before that, he is an African specialist and has taught in several French schools of journalism. He's a former correspondent for Irish radio, television, RTE, and the Irish Times in Paris. Okay, thank you, John. We have another important person who is visiting us very recently, Mr. Claudio Capon, Secretary General of COPIAM. It's a constant conference of video and audio operators of the Mediterranean. Mr. Claudio Capon has just arrived, I think yesterday, but you managed to see the concert, right? Okay, which is good, because that was one of the shining stars of the events along the media dialogue. Mr. Capon used to be the... Claudio Capon is Secretary General of COPIAM, Permanent Conference of the Mediterranean Audiovisual Operators, and is on the panel of experts chosen by the EBU to perform peer-to-peer reviews of the public service value, different members which commenced in October 2014. Mr. Capone is a former senior executive at RAI, which is the Italian broadcaster, and the EBU. As far as I know, Mr. Capone has a background in economics with a PhD. Right. Okay. So, if I may, I'll join the panel together with my guests. Thank you. So, one of the speakers will be speaking to us in Russian with a small comments. But before that, what I wanted to do is just give you the perspective for today's session. Okay, Asia and Europe media dialogue focus on Central Asia. Basically, I think it's important to know that when we focus on Central Asia and when we are given the perspective that we want our parties to kind of look as if they are in Central Asia, what I wanted to do is just to put some kind of portrait of what we have in Central Asia and what is Central Asia. Historically, Kazakhstan has been always portrayed as part of Central Asia, but in many of the historical documents, Kazakhstan is normally put as, particularly the former Soviet Union, as Central Asia and Kazakhstan. We kind of have been always put as separate. However, that was like the geopolitical geography of the past. However, in the current world, what we see that the processes that are happening in international relations, they reveal that Central Asian perspective has a bit new colors, more colors coming on. That is, we're becoming a bridge. It's the first time we're having guests of this profile from all over Asia and Europe. And now what we wanted to do is just really to understand how we can integrate further and what we can do. So the perspective I wanted to give to our guests, and I wanted to first invite Mr. Claudio Capon with his presentation, is to share some of the background and experience you have on what you have done and have you been able to do in your organization, and also give some recommendations, like lessons learned that you've done for a new market, comparably new, that is basically the Central Asian media market wasn't very well known, and give us some advices on how well and how can we be more efficient with what we are doing now. Mr. Capon, will you be ready?
Yes, thank you.
You can
maybe I need a clicker for the presentation, but okay. First of all, thank you. It's really a pleasure for me to be here in Astana. First time in my life, but I hope that it will be repeated. Thank for the host and thank for the invitation. This session is focused on dialogue and the opportunities of dialogue. And speaking of dialogue and its perspective, I think that the Mediterranean region is certainly a unique example. the Mediterranean is a cradle of countless different cultures, and this sea has witnessed millennia of civilizations, sometimes peacefully cooperating, sometimes, unfortunately, fighting, but always interacting. And the result is a region extremely rich but diverse in history, religion, politics, and culture, that nonetheless has molded, though diverse, a specific multicultural and open environment. So in a way, I think that this may be an example for the diversities, how the diversities may be transformed into richness. COPEAM, which is the Association of the Mediterranean Audiovisual Players, has the ambition to promoting dialogue and cultural integration through audiovisual cooperation initiative, exactly capitalizing on the diversities of the area considered as a richness. So if we may go on. No?
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, first of all, who we are an association, with non-profit association that has the mission to promote dialogue, cultural integration in the region. The members are public radio and TV broadcasters of the whole area, professional cultural organizations, media enterprises, higher education institutes and local authorities of Europe, the Balkans, North Africa, and Middle East. We have a lot of partners, ASBU, EBU, CIRCOM, International Federation of Journalists, and FAO, and a lot of supporters too, like European Investment Bank, UNESCO, European Union, and Andalin Foundation. So we are based in the Mediterranean and supported in the network that operates for the cooperation in the region. Our philosophy is to favor mutual knowledge, intercultural exchanges through professional training, TV, radio co-production, institutional partnership, know-how exchange. And our approach is an approach of multilateral cooperation and multilateral exchange of experiences. So basically, we capitalize on our network. The important thing is the network, the relations among the members. The fact that the members develop a kind of community in their activities. We are, let's say, a value-oriented association. That is, we cooperate on social issues and themes of general interest for the media of the region. Our main topics are audiovisual heritage preservation, gender equality promotion, awareness-raising campaigns, for example, of economic sustainability and the climate change issues. And we organize conference on media issues. And our key tools, if I may say, is radio and TV co-productions and training. Numbers. We have 80 members, active members and associates, among which 37 radio and TV broadcasters, basically all the public broadcasters of the region in 26 countries. And this is the map of the Mediterranean region. We are structured to work through, at the moment, we are very flexible on this. Our organization is very flexible. At the moment, we are structured around 7 thematic commissions devoted to specific area. Audiovisual heritage, which is now a key issue for our members because especially the public service members, as you know, have the most important historical archives in the region, and more the preservation of our heritage through audiovisual document is a a key element in preserving the identities and cultures in the region. We have Cinema Festival and Culture Commission, Exchange and TV Magazine Commission, Gender Equality, Training, Radio and TV. Training, of course, is one of the most important activities. Again, we capitalize on the strength of our members on two different teams: enhancing journalist skills on specific topics and developing a pool of young talents from cinema and audiovisual schools. We organize theoretical and training workshops to enhance the professional skills of journalists on various issues of regional interest. Normally, our members provide 2-3 experts that cooperate with a group of younger journalists of other regions in order to create an exchange of best practice. As an example, in the next month we are organizing in Oran, in Algeria, a workshop. Oran is considered the cultural capital of Algeria and will host important events in the next years. So we are organizing together with our Algerian colleagues and friends a workshop in Oran where will be 12 Algerian journalists from radio and TV, 12 from other countries of the region, under the supervision of 3 experts. These experts will provide a seminar with some theoretical knowledge, but after that, all the journalists together will work on the spot, shooting in different areas, making interviews, creating a common reportage, if I may say, that will be taken back to each country and will be aired by the different organizations present. So it's a way of promoting, of course, the richness of Oran, but on the other hand, having journalists learn about this richness in Algeria, but on the other hand, working on the spot. We're also carrying a number of specific actions addressing young talents of the Mediterranean cinema schools, promoting students' work through ad hoc showcasing in festivals and events. We have in our organization the cinema schools of Morocco, Tunisia, and Lebanon, and we promote their works through thematic festivals in Europe, on the northern shore of the Mediterranean. One was in Rome 2 years ago, one is Marseille, there will be another one in the Puglia region in Italy. And then we are setting up a master course on TV series script writing involving 6 European and Southern Training Institute. This is financed and supported by European Union. In television, our most important activity is co-productions going on already since 7 years. It's called Interrive. It's done together with ASBU, the Arab States Broadcasting Union. Basically, it's each edition is devoted to a common general topic agreed among the members, and starting from a shared editorial approach that will be treated by each partner according to its own cultural professional background. The latest edition were Sports Without Borders, Stories of Travels and Seas, Creative Memory, The Past Meets the Future. And normally around this project we gather around 15 partners every year. So the idea, everyone will, all this production will be available for everybody, free of rights, and will be aired by the different organizations. Or will be used, like it was the case for RAI in Italy, to create a bigger program on the different points of view on a certain theme, for example, on a creative memory from different areas and cultures of the region. In radio, we have 3 radio magazines weekly, co-produced and broadcast under our supervision. The first is Cantara, which brings together since 1999 French-speaking radios around the Mediterranean current affairs. Mediterradio, dedicated to the island information of Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. And the most recent is Musica Med, a weekly program on Mediterranean contemporary music. We are not trying to make folklore or popular music, but we are trying to find common patterns in the most contemporary and well-known artists of the region, North, South, East, and West.
If I may, yesterday at the Radio Asia conference, we had a very fine presentation from one of the private radios, the spirit of Tengri, contemporary ethnic music. So it would be great actually to consider. Maybe.
Okay, thank you, it's interesting. And it's interesting to find how many similarities there are in such a diverse region, different culture, different religions. But in terms of what interests younger generations, and how music from Morocco maybe may interest French youngsters and vice versa. It's really interesting as really a step towards reciprocal knowledge. And also we have very recently a cross-media project. Project that is called Generation What. It's a project originated in France, developed by EBU in Europe, and together with EBU and the ASBU, we are working to adapt it to the Arab world and culture. The project consists in a wide survey covering several fields: youngsters' relations with family, society, religion, work, adulthood, love, future, national cultural identity. So it's very engaging. As you understand, this point of view from youngsters it's complex in a complex region, but extremely interesting. The process is still running, will be completed next year. It's implemented by public broadcasters of Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, and Tunisia. And finally, New Horizons. We would like, and we have the ambition, the hope to go beyond the Mediterranean, because we firmly believe that in a period of such important technological, financial, and social challenges for the media, especially traditional media, it's extremely important to have information and cooperation on what's happening all over the world, not only our region. And so we recently have been developing some projects, namely with Asian partners. One is Faces, How I Survived Being Bullied, cross-media international project brought by the Japanese public broadcaster NHK, and Beautiful Minds, a new co-production promoted by ABU. We, as COPAM, in the exchange with our organization, are disseminating. We have been facilitated with our members to participate to such projects in order to create a broader base and a broader space for cooperation in international environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, as you were asking for some advice and suggestions.
That's right, yes, I wanted to address that.
I don't think that you need so many advices. Of course, you know that challenges are very high. What we learned through cooperating in the Mediterranean is that diversity, the fact that there are small members, big members, members of different culture and religion, the members that have different political situation, may be, and in fact, a richness. We are facing in Europe and in the region some political difficulties, of course, anywhere, I would say, north and south at the moment. But what is important and what is really rewarding is that as professionals of the media, we may be a community because we have to learn the same thing. We have to provide our audience the same quality of content, and we may capitalize on what others have explored. We are in new territories in many regions. Technology has opened spaces still unexplored, and so I think that nobody may do everything alone. So but we may have support and help also from minor countries, where sometimes creativity is higher and more rewarding from other members. So there is a basis of professional quality and community, and capitalizing on that, I think we may all move onward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What I wanted to also address, maybe let's say at a later point, is the question of as you mentioned, the diversity. You would normally think that in big organization, even talking about United Nations or whatever, there's always a split. They normally someone would be a donor, and the other would be the host, so who would be getting the funds. So this kind of relationship normally may be happening in the Mediterranean region, I would think. So maybe later on we can talk about that. Because what I wanted to do now is just we kind of fly into the other part of the world and see what is the perspective from India. As I mentioned, Mr. Fayyaz Shahryar is managing one of the largest networks in the world. So, however, it's very mono-corporate, or maybe I'm wrong. Can you explain on that, and also just comment on what would be your perspective and what would be your advice on how to tackle diversity, and what would be the best for Central Asia as a way forward, of course, if you wish.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I discuss the size of my network and the kind of public service that we render, I would like to come to the topic of this morning's session. When you would recall, when Eldrin, along with two other friends, he set his foot on the surface of the moon, he said, "It's a beautiful blue planet with no rough edge." Unfortunately, notwithstanding the cosmonauts' worldview, there is no such exalted, synchronized, holistic view of anything in the world. World looks differently, from different angles, and often seen from a bipolar prism of East and West. Very unfortunate insofar as media landscape is concerned. From the broad differences between East and West, it is becoming increasingly clear that history, geography, and culture can change how we all think in subtle and surprising ways. Right down to our visual perception. Our thinking may have been even shaped by the kinds of crops our ancestors used to farm, and a single river may mark the boundaries between two different cognitive styles. I recall once the then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, she spoke to the then Prime Minister of UK, Mrs. Thatcher, and told her, quote, "World looks so different from Delhi and London," unquote. But there are certain things which have plagued the media landscape of the world. We have begun to see through the bipolar prism, saying East media, West media, Asian media, European media, creating a kind of ruckus inside the fraternity. For the past 2.5 decades, when media began to become popular and started deciding about the mandate to be given the political outfits to rule a certain entity, the political parties or the politicians, they started either controlling or subjugating or at least influencing the media. That was a kind of effort which automatically happened, but it desecrated and defiled the media landscape. The result is today, I'm told, when BBC approached its government saying that the World Service cannot be run by the license fees, this has to be funded by the Ministry of External Affairs in that country. They say, no, you fend for yourself. No, obviously, license fee can be sufficient enough for a British Broadcasting Corporation to serve the domestic audiences. But it may not do so insofar as BBC World is concerned. The same is the case with other big and small and important countries where you once had a very vibrant media, but today you are striking your head against the wall. The Western perception on world order, peace, justice, equality, rights and duties, humanism, sustainable development, progress, environment, religion, terrorism, etc., are often completely different from the Oriental perspectives on these. I think this morning we need to ponder over this and take back the message to our respective countries. And also with the coordination and the support of Asia-Pacific Broadcasting Union, try to bring out a kind of harmony between media outfits, media organizations across the world. Western culture conditions people think of themselves as highly independent entities. When looking at scenes, Westerners tend to focus on central objects more than on their surroundings. In the morning before this session began, I was talking to a friend on the front row among the audience that today's subject is very interesting and important, very significant, but also slightly explosive. But we need not to bother about that. We have to try to understand what is plaguing us and why is there a bipolar prism. Why can't two big, important, significant regions and zones come together to the rescue of the broadcast landscape of these two big regions? The actual theory of a bipolar media, which is essentially perceived as Western and Eastern, also needs to be further scrutinized as the world is getting more aspirational and more centers of gravity are emerging every passing day. It's vague and monolithic, making it convenient as a pejorative label, but difficult to pin down for analysis. There are more than a dozen countries and more than 20,000 news media outlets in Europe and America that qualify for the Western label. Western word I quote and unquote. Among these, there are local and national newspapers, television and radio broadcasters, wire services, satire sites, magazines, blogs, and trade publications. Given the differing and the often conflicting interests and views, these countries have no issues. To refer to all these as Western media, quote unquote, would be a broad brush. If I am rightly pronouncing the name, that is Wang Qiu, a member of China's legislature and head of the state-owned broadcaster China National Radio, claimed 60% of all mainstream Western media reports smear on China. Many Chinese share the idea that Western media outlets don't cover China fairly. Chinese state media outlets and Chinese government spokespeople regularly claim that Western media plays up China's weaknesses, exaggerates its potential as a regional threat, and ignores the successes. Similar bias between Western media, bias of Western media is accused of by Russians, India, West Asian countries, and countries of the Islamic world, Africa, and many more in Central Asia. A substantial body of independent research conducted over many decades highlights the proximity between Western news media and their respective governments, especially in the realm of foreign affairs, for reasons that include over-reliance on government officials as news source, economic constraints, the imperatives of big business and good old-fashioned patriotism, mainstream Western media frequently fail to meet democratic expectations regarding independence. In a study by Manchester, that most UK mainstream media performed to reinforce official views rather than to challenge them. Whether it's true or not, whether it has been done, said after a careful research, I'm not going into that. On the other hand, West perceives that China, Chinese, Russian, and media from the Islamic countries characterized by intrusive, state-mandated, ideological and political bias. All these things, there are many things to say on the subject, but we need to ponder on these subjects whether there is an element of truth in this or not, whether we need a homogeneity to create a healthy media landscape in the world. The three-tier divide of the global economic system, center, semi-periphery, and periphery, explicated in world system analysis, was equally applicable to the global academic and scholarship structure. The non-traditional fields of study, such as media and communication, inherited the full flavor of European universalism because they originated in the academic institutions of the center countries. The turn of the century saw a dramatic reaction to the Euro-American rhetoric of power. Organized groups of scholars have begun to question the presumption of European universalism in media and communication theory, encompassing its axiology, epistemology, methodology, and ontology. Global divides in media and communication studies have emerged, with some Asian scholars going back to the philosophical genius of Buddha, Laozi, Confucius, Nagarjuna, and others to derive relevant theoretical frameworks. In All India Radio, as Yarlik told me, that I have to say that what kind of service do I do and render to the people. We are funded by the government to a great extent, and we generate revenues also, because the full loaf of All India Radio and Doordarshan, which is television in India, it's public broadcasting. But one slice of it is definitely and irrefutably commercial. In spite of government funding the infrastructure and also paying the wage bill, there is not the control that is being spoken about India in the external media organs. Now, how does it happen? It happens when government funds you, because government is a democracy, operating in a democracy, and they want people to be happy. Now, if there is no worry of government for the welfare of the people, the control on the media becomes somewhat dangerous. And the danger for whom? Danger for the media professionals, the media organizations, etc. There is a media landscape in Central Asia. I think Yarlik and others will speak about that with full authority. But I have just kick-started a debate. We need to ponder over these aspects, whether they are correct, they are not correct, they are justified, not justified. That needs to be debated. Thank you.
Mr. Shoya, thank you very much. Rather difficult philosophical aspects for the dispute here. As far as, if I may summarize what you just said, you basically covered a number of issues, particularly with regards to the bipolar media. So there is some kind of divide between East and West in terms of how media is perceived. And it's not always that the West and the East, they understand each other. That particularly talking about the fairness, about the clearness of the pictures, and basically there is a huge need for a dialogue. So I want to thank you for this perspective, and would like to ask our other guests, if I may, Mr. John Maguire, if I may, would you be able to comment on those calls? do you think these are challenges? Have you been able to kind of to support the dialogue with your Asian colleagues? I know you are very active with the ABU and other Asia Pacific organizations. Have you been able to, do you agree with these challenges? Do you think this is the story?
Well, I agree 100% with the challenges that you have described. Just to put things into a little bit of perspective, and first of all, thank you, Vice Minister, for your welcome, and thank you, Kaz Media and all the organizers for this wonderful event. When I was 18 years of age in Galway University in Ireland, 44 years ago, the world was a similar place in many ways because the tectonic plates of geopolitics were shifting in a very, very serious and violent way. In my own country, we had a conflict which was raging in the northeast, which is still not completely resolved. The European Union was emerging as a hopeful counterpoint to the Cold War, but the Cold War was raging. We had just gone through the Prague Spring and the events in Paris, which had rocked the European society. Big moments of change, and big moments of positive change in many ways. People were hopeful. People were motivated to actually work together to create a better society. The world was also a simpler place because in terms of media, well, first of all, there were no mobile phones. There were no computers. No social media. In my country, Ireland, I mean, I work for a French company. I've been living in France for 32 years, but I'm going back to 44 years ago because it's important in terms of media. The audiovisual media was so limited. We had one television station, 2 radio stations, and in terms of the printed press, we had 3 papers. One on the left, one on the right, and one which was government. And that was it. That was the limit of our information. And everything was local. I didn't know what Kazakhstan was at 18 years of age. All I knew was that there were missile buildups between the Russians and the Soviets and the Americans. But I think the big difference and the worrying difference for me as a journalist is that 44 years ago, the press was respected, there was trust, there was confidence. This was the period of just before the end of the Vietnam War, and 44 years ago, you had Watergate. Now, there are lots of similarities between what's happening in American politics today and what happened with Watergate. But the big difference is that the press, the fourth estate, was recognized and respected as the fourth estate. It was there to hold authority to account. It was there as a moral arbiter of, it was a check and a balance, an important check and balance against overweening power, against slippage from democracy into authoritarianism. And I fear that today, because of the whole breakdown of trust, first of all, in media, and President Trump of the United States has played upon this in an extremely clever way with false news. And modern technology, social media, and then the privatization, and especially this is the case in the United States, because the United States does not have a strong public service tradition of broadcasting. It does not have a strong state broadcaster. So everything's private, and therefore it's all in the hands of moneyed interests, be they on the right or be they on the left. MSNBC on the left, Fox News on the right. And they're both pushing agendas, and of course, social media and the new technologies, which, by the way, all came out of the military-industrial complex. Let's not forget that the internet was a US military creation. All these new inventions have meant that societies have become so disparate and separated apart, where people are in their bubbles, people are not listening to other opinions, they're all in corners in cyberspace. Because as we know, television at this stage in the United States and in Europe is shifting very strongly from linear let's sit down at 8 o'clock in the evening and watch the news, to accessing information at any time of the day and from any corner of the world on your mobile telephone or your iPad or whatever, or your PC. So my worry, and I think this is touching upon what you said, is that the role of the media has become very fragile, is fragilized within our societies. We've gone global. I'm sitting here, an Irish person living in France, in the middle of Central Asia, in a very prosperous country, which I know very little about, but of course that's what we're here for. We're here to dialogue and open connections. But at the same time, we've still remained local. We've still stayed local. And I think the experience of what's happening within the European Union at the moment is proof of that. Because the hope that we had when I was 18 years of age was that we would all work together. We were all different, but we would work together in some form of solidarity in terms of common values. Whereas what we see in Europe at the moment in the European Union is everybody's pulling apart. And that's extremely tragic. And just to refer to Claudio, I think an organization like the COPEAM is extremely important, and I think there's so many things to learn from it. One of the things that the COPEAM, and I shouldn't go on blabbing, but one of the things I think that the COPEAM and other organizations in the region, in that particular region, are important for, is how to deal with the migrant crisis, because that's the elephant in the room when it comes to all European organizations, be they media organizations like the COPEAM, or be they like the European Union themselves. The issue of migration is hugely important in Europe, and I don't think it's being addressed enough. The other thing, and I will stop on this, I think we have failed as media in so much as instead of listening to what's coming up from the bottom, what people are actually saying. And I think there was a workshop the other day that I attended, and it was the Australian guy, Mr. Staunton, who said, get out of your office, go to cafes, sit down in restaurants, listen to what people are saying. And if there's a lack of trust in our media, it's because we have been perceived of as elites, as people who are preaching. We're the self-satisfied ones. We're the ones who've got the right message. We're absolutely right. But there's a disconnect. And a lot of audiences have just gone, and of course, privatization of media, the internetization of media, has all fed into that splintering of any kind of a common civic approach to what we're living. And that's made the world a very dangerous place.
Thank you. Very good comment. John, I hope that you have your earphones, because yeah, the next speaker will. Mr. Alan Ajibayev, right, he's the chairman. I know him for some good time. So my question will be the following, basically, looking at the background. You've spent a lot in the private sector. It's Channel 1, right? Channel 1 for English. You've spent some good time in the private sector, then you spent some good time on the government side, and now you're the chairman of the national agency, Khabar. What would be your perspective? What is the perspective of Khabar, and from your personal view as well, what would be the best strategy to open up for international media? How do you engage? What are your plans and your views? Especially given that our colleagues have just mentioned that they knew little about Kazakhstan, and especially what's happening here.
Спасибо большое. Прежде всего, доброе утро. Вы знаете, очень было интересно. Наверное, стоит прежде всего отметить, да, что, наверное, благодаря работе и в частном секторе, и в Министерстве информации и коммуникации, сейчас уже в агентстве, мне, наверное, повезло, потому что я получил большой опыт. Касательно самого агентства, агентства Хабар, то, наверное, она играет значительную роль не только в нашей стране, но и за рубежом. Объясню почему. В агентстве присутствует 4 телевизионных канала. Основной канал – это Хабар, Хабар-24, фильмовой канал Елярна, ну и один очень важный продукт – это международный канал Казах ТВ. Сейчас этот канал вещает на 4 языках. То есть одна картинка, 4 дорожки. Казахский язык, русский язык, киргизский язык, английский язык. А осенью этого года появится еще одна дорожка на узбекском языке. И я надеюсь, что мы не остановимся в этом процессе. Что еще важно в этом канале? Дело в том, что этот канал может быть в меньшей степени рассказывающий о политической ситуации. Он рассказывает как раз-таки о регионе, о стране, как Казахстан, и о регионе, как Центральная Азия. Весь продукт, который делает Казах ТВ, это стопроцентный продукт, произведенный в нашей стране. Важно, что вот с недавнего времени мы сделали даже в кооперации совместный продукт с телеканалом Discovery, который появится и на канале Казах ТВ, и во всей сетке каналов Discovery во всем мире. Это определенная часть наших шагов для того, чтобы узнали о нашем регионе, узнали о наших городах, узнали о Центральной Азии. И, вы знаете, не всегда можно сделать это через призму каких-то политических моментов. Надо рассказать о простых вещах, о музыке, о кино, о том, что как живет тот или иной человек. И когда вы доносите такие месседжи, наверное, созданных из простых, а может быть в той же степени и уникальных историй, мир будет узнавать вас немного лучше. А соответственно, если узнают нас немного в мире, то, возможно, будут приезжать не только на Азия Медиа Диалог, но и на другие мероприятия. Возможно, кто-то будет с интересом отнесется к тем или иным проектам. Возможно, он идет сюда, здесь себе какую-нибудь работу, семью, может быть, здесь построить дом. Поэтому агентство Хабар старается сделать продукт, который будет интересен тому человеку, тому зрителю, который хочет просто узнать что-то новое, узнать о регионе Центральной Азии. Вот примерно вот так. Спасибо.
Спасибо, Алан Газизович. У меня еще один, конечно, вопрос. Вот здесь вот любопытнейшие истории были, что я по-русски, I'll continue in Russian, right? Same channel. Значит, что вот любопытно, да, Копиам рассказывает о том, что важно поддерживать связь, партнерство, международные отношения, обмен экспертизой, опытом. В Средиземноморском регионе это сыграло большую роль. Наш коллега из Индии подчеркнул, что медиа также культурно разделилась на две части, биполярный мир, есть Запад и Восток, которые друг друга не понимают и очень часто имеют совершенно разные восприятия о том, что происходит в той или другой стороне. Очень любопытный господин Магуайр рассказал свою перспективу о том, что вот их история изменения основных вот этих событий, которые происходили в западных, для нас, западном медиа. Это история с холодной войной, это и вьетнамский, да, и Вотергейтский скандал, который сегодня говорят вроде бы о возросшей важной роли медиа, но с другой стороны о том, что роль медиа несколько стала более хрупкой сегодня ввиду новых технологий, если я так его правильно понял. Так вот, в этой сфере я думаю, что прям роль у казахстанских медиа прямо сейчас очень возможный хороший потенциал, давайте даже шире скажу, у центральноазиатских. Как вы считаете, была бы возможность, есть ли хорошая перспектива для того, чтобы создать что-то такое центральноазиатское, центральноазиатский медиасоюз, что-то связанное с культурным обменом, взаимным обогащением, которое, естественно, было бы также интересно и нашим коллегам в Азиатско-Тихоокеанском и Европейском Союзах?
Конечно, если честно, да, коллеги, дамы и господа, любой союз – это создание, наверное, определенной площадки для того, чтобы развивалась медиаиндустрия. И не только медиаиндустрия. Вообще, сегодня говоря о том, что много появляется фейковых новостей, много появляется там хайпа в интернете, социальные медиа делают, наверное, резкие шаги, и мы им начинаем отчасти доверять. На самом деле, я все-таки, знаете, хотел бы сказать один момент касательно традиционных СМИ. Традиционные СМИ играют важную очень роль. Почему? Потому что они как раз-таки не дают развиваться некоторым хайповым новостям, некоторым фейковым новостям. Ибо определенное доверие зрителей все-таки есть к традиционным медиа. Почему? Потому что в традиционных медиа проверяют все-таки несколько источников. Как бы кто ни говорил, может быть, это немножечко медленно, может быть, это не всегда очень, может быть, даже оперативно, но тем не менее, для того, чтобы выдать новость в телевизоре, все-таки наши журналисты и журналисты мира проверяют из нескольких источников. Поэтому я считаю, что роль и телевидения, и любого интернет-портала, или любой радиостанции все-таки очень значимая. Почему? Потому что это не дает развиваться сильно, скажем так, не дает развиваться фейковым новостям. Всегда обращаются к традиционным СМИ и перепроверяют. И, соответственно, создавая тот или иной союз, самое главное, это будет объединять всех медийщиков. И когда происходит объединение медиагрупп с точки зрения партнерства, с точки зрения обмена информацией, обмена контентом, то, соответственно, у вас появляется дополнительный источник информации, который перепроверил ту или иную новость. Поэтому я считаю, что это очень важно для Центральной Азии, для региона, в том числе Средиземноморского, и где мы можем, на самом деле, очень многим обменяться информацией и, самое главное, донести до зрителя честную и правдивую новость.
Очень классное замечание, спасибо большое. Джон, вот я возвращаюсь, coming back to your comment about the U.S. story that in the United States people normally, I mean, there's less tradition for the public broadcasters, right? It's more for the private. So I guess the story of fact-checking and fake news is much more vivid for you, right? Rather than to the Asian type of media when there is a lot of government in the media. Is that correct way to understand?
That we have fact-checking
as a more important on agenda, because in say, as Mr. Ajabay has just noted, here the traditional media is kind of a believed, a trusted source of information.
Yes, I think I'd just like to pick up on Alan's statement. I think the idea of creating a regional hub of a network of public service broadcasters is an excellent idea, because I think we have to be, as public service broadcasters, terribly reactive to the threats, and I'm using the word carefully, the threats posed by other forms of information coming from whatever it is, from private stations, from websites, from anything on the internet. The problem with fake news is once something's clicked and it's out in the cyberspace, it tends to propagate, and whatever you do to try and counter it is a rearguard action. So what we do actually, we do two things practically in France Média Monde, and especially on France 24, the television station, is we've got a program called True or False, which basically is about 15 minutes long every day, and it tells the audience how to see the difference between false news and real news, and it gives concrete examples. It's quite pedagogical. The other thing we do, and I think it's highly important, is to bring in kids into the picture, children. The French government has set up a day of the press, but we have gone further than just one day of the press. We bring in schools, secondary schools largely, or we go out, we send journalists out to secondary schools, because education in media is highly important now, because kids are getting their information from lots of different sources. So I think it's highly important for traditional legacy media like ourselves to go out into the field, talk to kids, show them what it is, bring them in. We bring them in occasionally into our newsroom to show them how the newsroom functions and how we fact check.
Yeah, true. Mr. Capone, would you like to comment?
Well, of course, as mentioned by John Magaya and the General Director of Linear Radio, we are facing huge changes and huge problems. In terms of what is important for cooperation and mutual understanding, in my view, of course, fake news and everything is a big challenge, the internet, social media, and so on. But it's not just a question of fact-checking, which is important, but it's also a question of mindset. And on this, that's what my experience. It's very important to go out of each one comfort zone. We all grow in a specific culture, more or less. We have to understand that there are other cultures. Diversity is not something wrong, it's just diversity. And this is not an effortless exercise. Working in the Mediterranean, that's why it's interesting for me. I've been Vice President of EBU, so more European focus, and General Director Rai, more Italian focus. You need some effort. You have to understand the others when you work together. But professionalism is a common basis which is very important. So you need mutual respect and the flexibility that, to understand that not everything that you believe in is necessarily the truth, the absolute truth. It's something that may be seen from a different point of view from other, provided it's quality and professionalism. So again, it's something that needs some effort. It's something that implies that you go beyond your comfort zone. And first, I would think that technological difference, you know, you said donors and big and small, this is less important than cultural barriers sometimes. So that is the real issue. Maybe as an Italian, you know, Italians are known to be very flexible, to be somehow without many principles, so we are used to any kind of diversity, so that's why they chose me probably. And so I work perfectly with Islamic country, with Balkans, with French, with everybody. But again, I'm joking, of course. But again, this is something important in my view. So of course there is professionalism, fact-checking, programming, but also the idea that the world is a world of diversity and all diversity must be respected.
Excellent comment. Thank you very much. Ms. Shahryar.
John discussed at length. I'll just, before I take your question, he drew our attention towards lack of trust. This is very important, and he's very right, according to me. Now, what does it lead to? It impacts the credibility of a media organization or a media organ. Now, that media organization which loses its credibility now is not welcome by the audiences that it has around it. Now, what does it ultimately lead to? The fake news. What does fake news do to a media organization? It fetches revenue from a certain section of people. Why does that organization need revenue? Because it has to sustain itself. This is one of the maladies which needs to be pondered over again. So the point is that are we strong enough to generate as much revenue as would help us to fend for ourselves? Or there has to be a mechanism of creation of resources that helps an media organization to survive in a fiercely competitive market.
Very interesting. I think we have a lot of questions on the agenda, but if you have any final comments for this session, please welcome. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, John.
Sound coming from? Anyway, one of the things that I would like to touch upon is the threat that's coming. I'm sorry.
But the challenge is making sure that everybody.
My app went on. My BBC app. I'm sorry, I didn't know where the sound was coming from. One thing I would just like to touch upon very quickly is another threat, and I'm talking about threats. I don't want to sound too pessimistic here, but one of the things that we're faced with is how we're distributing our material as public service broadcasters. And we've had to, in many ways, go down the road of giving over a certain amount of control to organizations such as Facebook. And my worry, and I think a lot of my colleagues' worry, is that we're going down a very dangerous road, because Facebook, with its algorithms and everything else, could end up dictating the kind of content that we produce, rather than us being the actual the people with the power over our own content. And that's another aspect of new technology that I think that has to be dealt with.
I think I need comments on that very strong point, right? Anyone? Mr. Capone?
Well, I may just say one thing. The challenges we have heard from all the participants, and we all know, are huge. There are threats. The media landscape is changing. What I can say, there is not the solution at the moment. Maybe it will come, but there are no. So it's just an issue of common effort. That's why such events like these, opportunity to exchange, it's a common effort of professionals, both in technology and journalism, to regain, if lost, the trust of the people, and to understand deeply which are the reasons for some mistrust and work on that. So it's a long effort, and the effort requires to have no cultural barriers and to understand the others.
Thank you very much, colleagues. If I may, I just wanted to draw some conclusions before with the next sessions with a coffee break. So we heard very interesting perspectives. One, and I would like to first address the point which was highlighted by Mr. Shahriyar, is the bipolar world and very diverse ways on how people, I mean the media, treat each other and cultures treat each other. Basically, to me, the biggest point is communication, even communication between media, not talking about the audience, which is solved with the organizations like ABU and COPIAM. I would like to highlight again, thank you very much for setting up this stage and platforms like that. And on the other hand, I like the comment from Mr. John Maguire for the liberal approaches that there are in terms of US and let's say the liberal markets like that, when there is an absolutely different, I would say, treatment of what media needs to do and how it works in terms of especially the trust issue compared to what the public broadcasters do. And Mr. Azhabayev has noted to us that there is some strategy, there is approach, that even without referring to politics, you can simply give the good idea of what can be done. And for us, I just wanted to highlight that maybe it's worth considering, Mr. Azhabayev, that why don't we suggest that there is some kind of Central Asian agenda for the broadcasters to get together, and then maybe we can work closer to the on the interinstitutional international relations and the media. I think for that we will be able to make media better and also to introduce Central Asia to the rest of the world. Okay, thank you very much, and coffee break. It's like 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, let's come back to this hall. Thank you.
Înțelegi? Bine, îl comandă cei de sus acum, știu, dar vreau doar să văd ce se întâmplă.
Deci ideea este că
nu e deschis, e calm.
Ba da.
Ok. Atunci o să mă duc sus.
You have to check with Siva. Do you know Siva?
No.
Siva is the small Indian guy. Is he bigger? Yes. Nice one. Hi. Hi. Pleased to meet you. Thank you for coming. So, my pleasure. Small Indian guy called Siva.